Okay, so we're now on to Zakat. So again, we remind ourselves, what does Islam do? Islam is uh, essentially theocentric, accidentally anthropocentric. Okay, Islam is essentially theocentric and accidentally anthropocentric. What does that mean?
It's primarily focused and centered on the needs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and God, and then secondary only on the needs of man.
Okay, that's a good explanation, not a perfect explanation though. Good. Okay, any other explanation?
Well, theocentric as in the main, it's centered on God or obeying God's commands, and
When you say
I
when you say,
guess
when you say main, what do you mean main? Like, is it that we
or
it's
its sole
soul? Yeah.
purpose.
So this is the thing. So Sham, you use the word primarily and secondarily, which is not right and not wrong, right? But I'm keen to think is that it's you. All I'm interested morally is Allah, right? If Allah told me to go nuke the world, it would be a good thing to do. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said be racist, it would be a good thing to do, right? All Allah's asking me to do is turn to me and do what I want you to do. Okay, sure. But it is an accidentally anthropocentric, which means what?
That it's a natural byproduct of
Good.
obeying Allah
Byproduct.
subhanahu wa ta'ala's
That's
commands.
the word we wanted, right? Byproduct. So as a byproduct of you turning to Allah, you said, "Oh Allah, if you told me to kill my son, like Sayyidina Ibrahim, I'll do it." Okay? So that's a good vignette of it, right? Is it good to kill children? Is infanticide a good thing? Yes, if Allah tells you to do it. What's your evidence? Sayyidina Ibrahim. Okay. When Sayyidina Ibrahim tried to do blindly tell him what Allah tells you to do. What happened? He slaughtered the ram. What did he do with the ram? Gave it to the poor people to eat. And this is the Hajj. You all turn and go to Hajj and you slaughter animals and give people who are hungry, you give them meat, right? So it's essentially theocentric. Turn to Allah, turn away from creatures. You're not looking at creatures, but then as a byproduct, as an accident, right? As a non-intentional thing, well, from our point of view, from Allah's point of view, it is intentional, but from our point of view, then you help other people, right? So zakat is like that. Allah, you've said, say if you save money, then give some away. Okay, I'm doing that for your sake, ya Allah. All right. When you give zakat, you are not trying to fix the world, right? You're not trying to fix the world, right? You're not saying, man, the world's messed up. We need to help people out, No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the world is messed up. I have made it messed up. I have made poor people. I have given to some and withheld from other people. I have made crying children. I have made widows. I have made famine. I have put you in this world of difficulties for you and limited funds for you to use your limited funds to show me if you care about me or not, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will repair everything. Don't worry. Don't be like, oh my God, like I can't function. The children are crying. I can't function. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made children cry. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take all of that pain and repair it in a split second. Don't worry. But Allah's testing us. What will you do about the child crying? What will you do about these things, right? So we essentially turn to Allah. Accidentally, as a byproduct of that, we turn to people, right? And so what do we find then in religions is when they lose that focus, or they lose that byproduct. So a good question to ask people are like, where's the byproduct of Islam? Like, are you actually helping people? Where's the byproduct? Show me the byproduct, right? The fruits, the accident. If they may be accidental, meaning you weren't intending that, but show me what's happening. You're supposed to recite Quran, and Quran is supposed to change you, should make you a better person, right? It should be nice to be around you, right? It should be something else. But if that's not happening, then there's a serious problem, right? So if you think about it like, uh, you know, um, you know, so some religions are going to be just focusing on God Himself, and it doesn't actually matter about the morality or the nice. There's no niceness in it, right? And you'll find many Muslim scholars will be like that. They're very happy to have fiqh that has no nice byproducts. Like it doesn't matter that you're not a nice person. You know, uh, the Sharia says that, so it's okay. It doesn't matter if you're a good person or not, right? Whereas that's not how the Prophet ﷺ was. The Prophet ﷺ turned to Allah. Through his turning to Allah, he became more merciful and kind than any human could ever be, because his kindness and generosity, emotional and material generosity, stemmed from Allah Himself, as opposed to, oh, I feel bad for people, right? So there's a fundamental difference between somebody who's like, hey, I want to help the world, versus the Muslim who wants to help the world. The Muslim says, I'm turning to Allah, I'm not turning to people. Whereas someone's like, man, I have so much pain in the world, it hurts me. I want to try and reduce it. Like one person is trying to fight against Allah and try and like repair the world that Allah damaged. Whereas the believer is saying, I see you in all of these things, and I see the message you want me to do, and I'm doing that, oh Allah. Right? It's an important thing to understand. Okay, so that's zakat is an example of that. So zakat is obligatory on 5 types of property. So that it's livestock, money, agriculture, fruit, and trade goods. So it is not obligatory on anything else. Charity is fine, right? But zakat is on these specific things. Okay, so number one. Number one then is zakat is obligatory on 3 types of livestock. And so these are the most common domesticable megafauna, right? Many of you heard, I repeat myself a lot, this word domesticable megafauna. What does it mean? It means a large chunk of protein that you can control, right? It's like saying a battery, right? A battery is access to energy that you can manipulate and control. That's very important, right? The Tesla, wow, here is an electrical car that actually goes fast. Well, we can actually manipulate it in a certain way. That's very important, right? So controlling electricity and manipulating electricity and storing electricity is a huge thing. That's what a cow is. A big chunk of protein that you don't have to go and hunt. You don't have to expend a lot of energy getting it. You just pull it here, pull it there, slaughter it, eat it. It's easy, right? You can turn carbohydrates into protein with this big machine called a cow, a sheep, goat, camel, etc., right? So yes, there are other megafauna in the world. The Inuits with their reindeer, South America with their llamas and alpacas, etc. Horses of Central Asia, right? But these are the main, right, big chunks of meat. And so the Dean looks at the general picture. So I live in El Salvador, and I'm like, I don't actually have any sheep or goats or cows. So like, and I don't pay zakat on alpacas, and like, not really. So like, okay, so I guess, okay. So I don't really see the spirit of the deen. So yeah, it's less. So you would pay zakat in another way, for example, in the money that you save from it, right? Or what if I had chickens or ducks, right? Right, then there's no zakat on chickens and ducks, right? But it is on these main animals. Allahu A'lam, is it possible that we look at an alpaca and a llama as a camel, right? Are they actually camelids?
They're camelids.
Mm-hmm. Can they interbreed?
I don't know.
You can, yeah. So you can get a what's it called, a karma, right? A half camel, half llama. And it does exist. I'm not sure if it's fertile or not, right? So the question is then, when we spoke about this before, when we spoke about a wolf, right? So we said a dog is filthy and a wolf is pure. Say why? What's the difference between, right, Canis lupus and Canis canis? Like, isn't it the same? They're basically the same thing, right? I mean, what's the difference? Is not much, right? Are there, genes, are they really that different? I don't know. So we say, what is the difference? The difference between Canis canis and Canis lupus, right, dog and a wolf, is that an Arab would call, at the time of the Prophet, so let me say, what do you call this? Do you call that a kalb, ajalakumullah, or would you call that a dhi'b? What do you call it? He says, I call this a dhi'b, I call that a kalb. Okay, therefore they are not the same things, right? Similarly, a peccary and a pig. We're not looking at the zoology or the biology. We would say, Arabs, what would you call this? You say, yeah, that's a pig. Yeah, but it's not a pig. A peccary is not a pig. It's like a totally different animal. So yeah, but if he calls it a pig, then it's a pig. So I'm not giving a fatwa here, but I'm saying is we take this, take an alpaca, take a llama, and present it to a Bedouin at the time of the Prophet. So I say, what's this? Oh, the Jamal Gharib, right? Here they say this is a camel, just odd, right? It's just small, just funny, right? Just like, for example, Bactrian camels, right? So Bactrian camels are different to dromedaries, however you pronounce the word, right? So the one-humped camel of the Middle East is not as the two-humped Bactrian camel of Central Asia, right? So they are different, but you pay zakat in both. A buffalo, a water buffalo, right, is a cow, right? A bison is also a cow, right? Even though they're quite different, right? And a cow is a cow, and and they could be like really different sizes. But if you bred bison, that's called a cow. If you bred water buffalo, that's called a cow. If you bred dairy cows, that's called a cow. If you bred meat cows, that's called a cow, right? So even though they're kind of different, it's still considered a cow, right? Just another example where there's a difference with very close genes is an onager or a wild ass versus a donkey. So they're not very different at all, right? So I don't know how long it was ago, maybe 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago in ancient Egypt or maybe somewhere else, they domesticated wild donkeys. And now we have this thing which is called a donkey. Okay? So a donkey is a pure animal, but you cannot eat it. It's haram to eat. Whereas an onager, right, it's called himar al-wahsh. It's called a wild. It's called literally the wild donkey, right? Is not a feral donkey. It is a different animal. It's called an onager. It has another word as well. You find it you used to find it in the Middle East. You find it in North Africa, in Africa. You find it in Central Asia, and it's a wild animal. And they used to hunt it and eat it, and the process of them, they used to eat it, time the process of them, etc. is a thing, right? And so that's edible. So genetically, how significant is the difference between a onager and a donkey, right? But there's not much difference. There is slight difference, but not much difference, right? And so but they have a different hukm. One is halal to eat, one is not halal to eat, right? There is a slight difference, but one's so do we treat them as the same or not? I don't know. The default is no. So the default is you have a llama farm, an alpaca farm. There's no zakat on them, right? There's no zakat on them, and that's it. You don't pay zakat on them as camels. You pay zakat on them maybe as trade goods or something else. Okay, so we have camels. And we have cows, as we mentioned, and then sheep and goats. In Arabic, it's called ghanam. It's one category, right? When we don't call them two different things, we call it one thing. It is obligatory when 6 conditions are met: that the owner be Muslim, even if he has not reached puberty. Okay, so there was a kid, and his dad died, and this kid now owns 10 million camels. He pays zakat on it. He is free. So in principle, how could you own if you weren't free? Because if you weren't free, you'd be a slave. You yourself would be property. Can property own property? The answer is no. Right? Complete ownership, right? So here we have a funny scenario is I am owned by Badr, okay? Can I, this slave who is owned by Badr, own something? The answer is no. So I go to Badr, say, Badr, I want to buy my freedom. He says, fine. Give me $100,000 and you can go. So now he basically gives me a suspended or a temporary freedom. He says, Freed, go and work, make money, right? And give me $100,000 and you're free. So the money that I own now at any moment could kind of actually be cancelled and go back to Badr because I am Badr's property and whatever I own is in principle Badr's. So what's happened is I'm owning money. I'm saving this money. Today I have 20,000. This year I got 20,000. Next year I've got 40,000, 60,000. Mashallah, I'm getting there. Within 5 years, inshallah, I'll get there. I am zakat eligible. You can give zakat to me and buy my freedom. But this money is not really complete ownership because it's kind of like, in principle, could disappear at any moment. Does that make sense? So I'm free, I'm Muslim, even if I haven't reached puberty, and you possess the minimum amount, the minimum amount of gold, the minimum amount of silver, the minimum amount of camels, etc. And by default, a year has gone by. Okay, so we're going to see that, for example, for when you harvest, it's not the same, but for cows, for sheep, for goats, for savings, a year has to go past. And there's an exception here, which we'll see in a second, which is if the potential was there at the beginning of the year, then you still pay it. What does that mean? So I need 40 sheep, for example, in order to pay zakat. I have 20. Okay. But what happens in the middle of the year? It's January, freezing, and for some random reason, right? Sheep give birth in January. It's totally freezing, and they give birth. So now, at the end of the year, I have 40 or 50 sheep. Okay, with all these lambs, 40 or 50 sheep. But I didn't have that for a whole year. So do I pay zakat on it or do I not pay zakat? The answer is the potential, meaning the ewes, EWE, the ewes that you had, you owned them, right? And so when they gave birth, the potential was there. Okay, the potential for these things, and so you will pay zakat on them, as opposed to I had 20 sheep in the beginning of the year and then I bought another 20. No, you don't pay zakat on. You haven't had them for a whole year yet. Okay, so if the potential was there, yes, you pay that, right? So here's a question then: why do sheep give birth in the middle of the winter? Right? I remember, seeing that in England. It's like you step on the grass is like it's literally snapping because it's frozen. Um, it hurts to breathe in. Why would you give birth in the middle of winter?
Is it because for them their fur helps them?
Maybe. What comes next? What comes afterwards? What comes after winter? Spring, right? Yeah, a lot of zoology, right? But you learn a lot of lessons, okay? So that's got nothing to do with zakat, but it is a lesson in life. It's called delayed gratification, right? You went through a lot of difficulty because ease is going to come. So yes, I don't want my child, this animal, to be born in winter because winter is a difficult time and it's super cold. But the first 6 months of its life, you're going to have lots of grass. Okay, so that's a clever thing to do, right? That's quite a clever thing to do. It sounds a bit crazy, but it's a clever thing to do. Okay, so yeah, you're going to go through difficulties in life, but you do it for a certain reason. So yeah, I'm going to do this, but this is going to achieve this benefit, right? And so that's a good way to think. That's how animals think. Well, they don't really think, do they? But that's how they've, evolved, etc. Is like this: is you do things that actually makes a lot of sense, right? So delayed gratification, big thing, right? Systems, etc. that work, right? So we learn from nature. So anyway, the point is, animals, you're going to pay zakat for the animals that are born there as well. That the animals are grazed on herbage that grows without human intervention. It is not about human intervention. The issue is that you didn't have to go and pay for the food. So here are these sheep. You feed them for 3 months of the year. You do not pay zakat on sheep that are paid that are being fed 3 months of the year, or your cattle, right? So in England, you'll see this. What they'll do is they're eating grass throughout the year, and then in winter they're eating silage. Silage is like kimchi or what's that thing that they sauerkraut. So what they do is they get the grass and they put it in these they wrap it up when it's moist. They wrap it up in these black bags, and then it becomes what's it called, ferments, and then the cows eat that thing during the winter. Okay, so the cow is not eating going out and eating grass the whole year. So in which case there is no zakat is due in the Shafi school. Okay, so if you are significantly if you are paying for the land to graze on, or you are paying significant money for these kind of things, right? Then there's no zakat. As opposed to one day you had to keep the sheep inside. 2 days, 3 days, not a big deal, right? But if it's like a significant amount through the year, a whole month, the year you have to pay for their food, then there's no zakat is due, right? So what is zakat? Zakat in Arabic means increase. So Allah gave to you. You had some sheep, you took them out, they ate from the grass of the land and they drank from the stream, and then you came back and you milked them, right? And you just got more for giving nothing, as opposed to you're paying. If you are paying for fodder, if you're paying for land to graze them on, then no zakat is due. Now, the Malikis do not put this condition. And similarly, there's another condition that they not be work animals, right? So that's something else. So your camel, for example, is a camel that is used for carrying things. You have 200 camels that you use for shipping things from India across Central Asia, moving things from South, that's what they're used for. You have plow horses. There's no zakat on horses, um, um, but I don't know. Cow is also used for plowing, right? A plow cow, right? Whatever it's called. Um, um, Sheep that I don't know what can you use a sheep for. I don't know. So camels work animals. So cows that do work, or camels that do work. There's no zakat on that because this camel is doing a lot of hard working, losing a lot of calories, etc. So there's no zakat is due on those things. Okay. So otherwise, zakat is due on these things. Khair. A funny anecdote. Many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I was teaching zakat in Shafi fiqh, and there was one student online. And I'm like, why are you taking this class? He says, oh, I live in California and I am a camel farmer. I was like, wow, that's cool. Never heard that before. So he was a camel farmer in California and he wanted to know the zakat of camels. So fantastic. There we go. Um, And there's also interesting anecdote about camels and the use of camels in expanding the West. California and those areas, they're actually using camels at that time for moving. People don't know about that, but they're actually using camels. They're very important in Australia. So the British brought camels and cameliers from Afghanistan into Australia to use camels to move things across the desert. Very, very unique, special animal. And also they use in North America as well at certain times. Very important animal to a very important animal to the history of mankind, and a very new animal, as is the horse, by the way, right? So again, I'm not just talking about random things, but these random anecdotes are actually very important, because I just have to understand how quickly the world has changed. Camels are new to mankind. Horses are fairly new to mankind. It's not so. If you look at ancient Egypt, you'll see that originally ancient Egypt, they're having these huge battles with ancient Iraq, and they are using donkeys. They are not using horses. So camels and horses, the domestication of these animals is something fairly new in the history of mankind, right? So you have to understand how the acceleration of change in the world is very important to understand, right? Okay, so then it goes on to money. Okay, so it says zakat is due on two types of money, gold and silver. So by default, we are talking about gold and silver. And we've spoken about this before, and we speak about this again, is the issue of fiat currency, and by extension, Bitcoin. What is fiat currency?
Notes.
Notes. Okay, so pieces of paper. Is that essentially what it is?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so you
Um,
go to
I
England,
mean, well, yeah.
you go to England and I give you a pony. Okay, that's rhyming Cockney slang for a ten bob note, a £10 note. All right, 10 quid. There we go. Some slang for you. Okay, so I give you 10 quid. On the £10 note, it says something very important. It says, I, whatever, the Treasurer of England, of the English Bank, promise to pay the bearer the sum of £10, meaning I will actually give you gold. Okay, so in a time when the piece of paper actually represents gold and silver, we are not talking about pieces of paper. We are talking about pieces of paper which document a loan of gold and silver. So we are transferring loans of gold and silver, which is totally fine. Okay, not a problem. In Fort Knox, America has a limited, finite amount of gold. This is how much gold America has. This is how many dollars America has. It is finite and fixed because this is where our gold is. Okay? And so it's not about a piece of paper or not. Is it backed by gold or silver, or is it backed by commodities, right? So we're going to say, for example, it's backed by oil, right? This piece of paper represents 10 tons of crude oil of this quality. Okay, so that's a commodity. So in the Sharia came along and did two things. It labels things as wealth, right, which has innate value, wealth that has no value, and wealth that has a value in as much as it is a currency. Okay, so these three levels that the Sharia does. It comes along and says, blood is not wealth, you can't sell it. Urine is not wealth, you can't sell it. What's it called? Fortune telling, that is not a service that you can pay for. Prostitution, that's not a service that you can pay for. So the Sharia comes along and defines what is wealth, meaning what things cannot be sold and what services what services or usufructs are not acceptable, right? Use of something like this have any value? No, people might value it, but it doesn't have any value. Okay, so and then currencies. What is the point of a currency? So if I have services that have value and I have things that have value, commodities that have value, what is the point of a currency? What is the use of a currency?
To exchange value?
Exactly, right? So I am trying to exchange Badr's computer programming service for my cows. So how are we going to do that? Like I need his service, but I only need a certain amount of his service. And he needs some beef, but he doesn't want the cow. So I go up to him and I was like, well, I have one cow. He's like, I don't want a cow. I have two cows. How about that? So what we do is we come along and we get currency. Currency then says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the service that I gave to somebody into gold and silver, which is a currency, and then use the fractions of gold and silver to buy fractions of a cow. Otherwise, it's very difficult. There's this huge practical problem of exchanging services and commodities, right? Here's one cow for 200 chickens. Here's one chicken for this. Like you have a problem, right? If you remember back in the day when we used to use cash more, like, oh, I have a 50, I don't want to break it, right? Like it's a practical problem. So ancient peoples come along and they use currencies, right? The flow that we use in between in order to stop bartering and exchanging goods for goods or goods for services, we use currency. Okay, so the Sharia comes along and enshrines gold and silver as currencies, and so because they are enshrined as currency, there are certain rules that apply to them. Okay, there's certain rules apply to them, but the way that the Prophet ﷺ left us was this is a service that has a value. This is a service that does not have a value. This is a commodity that has a value. Has a service. This is a commodity that does not have a value. Wine does not have a value, right? A dog does not have a value, according to Shafi'is, for example. Here is a service that has a value. Here is a service that does not have a value. And then here is the currency that you can use to exchange, which is gold and silver. That's how the Prophet ﷺ left us, and we'll see inshallah next week what the issues are then with fiat currency and then cryptocurrency. Okay, because so it is, but the essential difference is not pieces of paper. Is it gold backed or silver backed or commodity backed currencies? Okay, we'll talk about that inshallah next week. Jazakumullah khair. So as they say about the Tafsir al-Razi, they say in the Tafsir of Imam Razi there is everything apart from Tafsir, meaning Fakhruddin al-Razi was so cultured and so educated that he spoke about so many things in Tafsir that it's almost like he's not talking about Tafsir, right? And so in reality, this is important, right? Fiqh, this has nothing to do with nature. Fiqh, that has nothing to do with history. That has nothing to do with society, nothing to do with economics, policy. It's not fiqh, is it? Right? It's not fiqh, right? Because fiqh is what Allah tells us vis-a-vis this world that we live in. So we have to talk about the world that we live in, right? And these are important things, And again, the whole thing about economics and history and change and the speed of change is very, very important for us to understand. Very important to understand. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Please don't send me, please, nobody send me a pet llama in the post, okay? Won't be too happy. I like them, but don't send them to me in the post. Okay, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.